Welcome to the City of Ojai Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, Thursday, July 7, 2022. We will start with roll call.
Apologize. Okay, so we'll begin with Chair Taylor,
Present.
Vice Chair Intner,
Here.
Commissioner Firestone,
Here.
Commissioner Wilson,
Here.
Commissioner Ruff.
Here. Thank you. And Youth Commissioner Ruff, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and I don't have any public comments that for items not on the agenda, unless anyone.
Oh,
No?
I'm sorry.
Okay, great. And Luis, do you have a police report to share?
We do, and this portion, I'm actually going to go ahead and kick it over to Weston. And Weston, if you wouldn't mind sharing the police report.
Yes, I can share the police report for the month of June 2022. Starting with the skate park, there were 2 calls for service, both calls unrelated to recreation. Libby Park, 1 call for service resulting in an arrest. Sarasota Park, 4 calls for service and 5 extra patrols. City Hall, there was 1 call for service and no calls for service at the 3 remaining Clough Vista, Rotary, and Taylor Ranch Park.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the police report, commissioners? No? Okay. And public works report?
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and begin with Clough Vista Park. At Clough Vista Park, there was some graffiti removed at the benches, in addition to the fountain. Over at Daly Ranch Park, there was new signs ordered to remind park goers to keep the dogs on leash. And additionally, there is a new mutt station that's going to be installed on the north side of the park there. We have one on the south. We're going to go ahead and put one on the north as well. Over at Libby Park, we got the new slide. The previous slide was damaged just from wear, and so we have the new one that was installed. There's also graffiti that was removed in the lower restrooms. In addition, there was wood chips that were replenished throughout the park. And then events held at the park for the month of June include the Potter's Guild, the music festival, and then 2 concerts from Sterling, as well as the Lavender Festival. Over at the skate park, there was repainting of the restroom facility. I did the outside and the inside. Toilet seat was repaired. Over at Rotary Park, there's nothing indicated to report. At Sarasota, we have restrooms and picnic areas were recently power washed. And then one that's pretty exciting, and I'm happy to go ahead and share about, was the gymnasium roof was repaired. So part of the capital improvement project that was repaired. And with that, that concludes our public works report.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions or comments on public works report? Moving on to our consent items. We have our minutes from our June 2nd, 2022 meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to review them? They're in your packet. Any questions or discussion? Comments, edits? Nope. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the June 2nd meeting as posted.
Thanks. Thank you. Luis?
So with that, we'll go ahead and do a roll call. Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Firestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Intner,
Yes.
Chair Taylor.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, item 7, presentation, actions, and discussion items. 7A, subject is Pickleball Ad Hoc Committee Update, which is from Commissioner Firestone and Wilson. Recommendation that the commission receive an update from the Pickleball Ad Hoc committee. I have a number of speakers for this. I was just discussing with Chair Intner on preference. We can either receive the update, or we can take public comments and then receive the update. It's, there's some flexibility. If you have some suggestions or input, I'm happy to hear it. I sometimes think that the input, the update impacts the comments, but in a positive way. I think it gives them more information, but I'm happy to, if there's speakers in the audience that would like to speak first before receiving the commission's update, we'll certainly honor that request as well. Okay. I'd like to just make that offer if anybody would like to speak. But otherwise, if not, we will move on with the ad hoc committee update, please.
Okay, thank you. And let me know if you can't hear me. I'm trying to speak up. So I just want to start with a little reminder of what our task is on the Pickleball Ad Hoc Committee. And it was a general task given to us by the City Council and the Parks and Rec Commission. And we really are trying to determine how best to accommodate residents' recreational needs, as well as honor the spirit of the city's noise ordinance, and look into this whole situation with pickleball and the noise that that is a different sort of recreational sound. So we looked at, we've previously reported that we have been investigating possible sites all around the city. Since this is the City of Ojai Parks and Recreation Commission, we are focused on the city and what the city can do within its boundaries. And so we did that preliminarily. We realized that to really go forward, we needed to get more information about potential sound mitigation options, and specifically around the courts here at City Hall, the Lower Libby tennis courts, and in this process, because it was recommended by the City Council, we also thought we would perhaps engage the services of an acoustical engineering firm to give an assessment of the potential sound mitigation measures that might be needed at the new multi-sports court in Sarasota Park. So we had some discussions with acoustical engineers. We received a couple of preliminary proposals and decided what we needed to do was actually write a formal request for proposals. And Commissioner Firestone had done quite a lot of research on potential firms. We tried first to stay local, very local. There's not a lot of acoustical engineering firms in Ventura County. But we then expanded using advice from acoustical engineers to Los Angeles County, and actually to 2 national firms. So we sent out the request for proposal to 6 firms. We set a deadline of receiving their proposals by July 15th. And we expect that we will be able to report on a selection and the next steps that will follow that selection at the August Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. So that's our timeline, and that's what we're pursuing right now. And I think we've already received 1 proposal back from that. So we'll be getting those in and reviewing them in the next couple of weeks.
When is the due date on the RFP? Or what was the?
July 15th.
July 15th.
Yeah. Anything you want to add?
No, that's a good summary.
Okay.
Well, I will say, we also reached out to, I believe, to the consultant in Arizona.
Yes, oh, it's good. Thank you.
Recommended, as well as somebody who runs a Facebook page on pickleball noise mitigation and does consulting.
Yeah,
so a couple others.
Yeah, so
beyond
we
the LA
responded
area.
we reached out to suggestions that were made from the community members also, and again, in addition to the suggestions made by other professionals. So we try to be inclusive. to the best of our ability.
Thank you for the update, and thank you to both Commissioner Firestone and Commissioner Wilson for their extensive dedication and time dedicated to this accelerated ad hoc. I know the amount of information that you're processing is well beyond what we would normally do on these ad hocs, and it really, I truly personally appreciate your dedication to that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I said, we have a number of speakers for 7A. My first one is Leslie Rule. Sure. Okay, Dale Hansen.
Good evening. Yes, I'm Dale Hansen. I live in the city of Ojai, and I'm here representing the Citizens for Sound Pickleball Policy,
Okay.
our new name. And I know that you all know how wonderful pickleball is. It's a great sport. It's a growing sport. And you get in the fresh air and you meet new people and everything, but all of that is irrelevant. That's not what these meetings are brought to bear about. It's about a repetitive, impulsive sound. And if you live near that, you'd be here with us. All of you would be here with us. All of these people in here would be with us if you lived near that, because it makes you nuts. It's a pop, 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 pop that hits your brain a different way. It's not a regular sound. And that's why we're asking to be a part of the choosing of the sound engineer, because it's a special kind of sound. We've done sound studies that doesn't measure it. And I'm not going to go into the details. Maybe other people here can say more about it, but it's a very unusual kind of sound and an unusual way to measure it. And so I really hope that when you do it, you will be able to find the right person to do it. And I thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bill Miley.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Miley, and I too am a member of our new name, Citizens for Sound Pickleball Policy. So just a couple of days ago, I listened to the complete March 3rd, 2022 recreation meeting to get all of the update on all of the processes that have been going on and the commentary, not only from the commission, but from all the people that called in. So I've been involved in the issue for a number of years, and I picked out the one element that seems to be the issue that complicates the whole community issue here. So, and it's a difficult key issue. But after listening to all the speakers, this is what I came up with in my opinion. Pickleball play is a noisy sport. Well, to be fair, pickleball play is an intense sound-generating sport. The sound changes to noise for many once it goes beyond the pickleball court. And acoustical engineering has shown that it can travel up to over 500 feet, the impulse sound. So, we have in the past, a year or so ago, took a mobile phone recorder in the second-story apartment 128 feet away and recorded the pop sounds and the voice sounds of the enthusiastic people who play and watch. Now, those folks who disagree and say tennis spectators, as an example, can be noisy. Yes, they can, once a point is finished, but not during the play. The players may grunt and groan and maybe make a sound when serving, but not verbalize. Ooh, ooh, ooh. You've heard that. But please think about this. Up to the start of pickleball play, no one had a problem with the sounds coming from tennis play for over 100 years. And pickleball play in town is about 4 years old. So, to again repeat, pickleball play is a noisy sport. But to be fair, pickleball play is an intense sound-generating sport. The sound changes the noise, unwanted for many folks, once it goes beyond the pickleball court. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron McCrae? I'm sorry, say it again. I said it right? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also a member of the Citizens for Sound Pickleball Policy. If anybody would like to join, we have memberships. It's about the repetitive impulse of the popping sound that we hear. I live in the neighborhood around right here. And for those who are just tuning in, they don't know what the problem is. It's the popping noise. It's the repeating noise. And about 3 years ago, there was a small group, the pickleball people. There wasn't very many, but they wanted a place to play. And they tried to go out to Libby Park. The tennis people said, no, we're not having you there. We know what it's all about. We did our due diligence. We know what it sounds like. It's going to be a problem. And so they took it to the city council. The city council said, well, why don't we just give them right out here? We have a tennis court right here. We'll just go ahead and give them that one. And so they did no diligence. They didn't do any research on it. They had no clue what a pickleball was. Some of the members even says, will it make any noise? What is it? I didn't know what it was. 3 years ago, nobody knew what pickleball was. So they said, okay, let's go ahead and give this court right over here, and they turned it into a pickleball court. Immediately, as soon as they did it, the neighbors started to complain. And they're still complaining. They're still here complaining. And so what happened is the city council said, yes, we acknowledge this is a problem. They're playing from 8 in the morning to sun comes up to all night long. And they get more and more members. And the citizens over here, the members over here of the neighborhood, they kept complaining over and over again. Finally, they admitted that they made a mistake, and they said, yes, okay, we made a mistake. So they put up this stone wall over here and all the acoustic tarps and try to minimize the noise, because they knew it was a problem, because the neighbors kept complaining over and over and over again for going on now 3 years. So it's still going on. It's still there, and we're still trying to stop it from doing it. The tennis people said no, they won't have it at Libby Park, and the only thing we can do is to move it. The Tickle people they have the right to play. That's fun forever. We know that. The city council made a big mistake. They didn't know what they were doing. They put it in there without due diligence. They didn't know. And they find out, they tried to minimize the sound, and it didn't work. So what do we do now? You've got to shut it down, find them a decent place to play, someplace else, because it's still bothering us. What's going on 3 years now? Isn't it enough? Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie Clark?
Hello, my name is Leslie Clark. I'm a fourth-generation Ojai resident and a member of the Ojai Pickleball Club Incorporated. I play at the City Hall courts almost every day, and it's gotten so popular, we're at maximum capacity, and I just wonder if it is possible to give us access, even if it's temporary, to the Libby courts. The tennis people don't own the Libby courts. It is a public park. And if we put up temporary nets and temporary lines, it would immediately, it would diminish the sound that the neighbors here are complaining about, and we would have more space. It would cost the city nothing, and the city would have to do nothing but give us permission. So I think that's a really good idea. If the tennis people want to complain, we just move whenever they have a big tennis event. We don't want to disrupt the tennis tournament, but we could move off the courts when they need to have the courts for a big tennis event. So that's my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob McFall?
Thank Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the Parks Recreation Commission. Again, thank you very much for all the time that you're spending on what is a difficult issue, and to the two commissioners who have worked so hard to come up with recommendations on the ad hoc committee. We all appreciate that. Both sides appreciate that because we want to have an objective outcome. One of the things I love about Ojai is one of the bumper stickers is coexist. Probably no place on earth does that bumper sticker more apply and is more visible than in Ojai. And obviously that's what we want to be able to do, is coexist. There's really 2 points that I wanted to make. First, last time I was here, I'd mentioned that my background is 10 years as a director of Parks and Recreation, 25 years as a city manager, assistant city manager. This issue is prevalent in so many areas. And I just want to note that as speaking from experience of having to be in the exact situation that you're in dealing with this. And with that, 2 observations that I wanted to make. The first, and what makes this very difficult, is that this is a new activity in what for probably 3 decades has been a very quiet area. So these neighbors have had the blessing and the opportunity to live in an area where there were no adjacent noises from any particular activities. And then suddenly there is an activity, a legal activity, activity that's allowed within the existing city code and meets all the planning conditions and standards for it. And that activity is now new to them and is very disruptive to the quiet life that they've been able to enjoy. And it's quite understandable that there could be some concern with that. However, that is the exact same concern when a new park goes in a new neighborhood, when a new baseball field is installed, when lights are put on facilities that didn't have lights before. It unfortunately just part of the progression of what a community experiences when new activities are come in. And one day, as racquetball faded and tennis grew, and as tennis faded and pickleball grew, pickleball will merge into something else, and it'll be the same kind of a cycle. So the first thing I want to note is, unfortunately, part of the problem is because this is noise in an area that simply didn't have noise before. The second, the whole discussion of a sound engineer is a very interesting one. If it is to come up with ways to help mitigate the noise, such as dual or triple pane windows for the residents across the street to help with that. So if it's for the purpose of trying to figure out how to mitigate the noise, there could be some real value with that. If, however, the purpose of it is to come up with a new noise standard for pickleball, that would be very troubling because there are so many, a planning department wants to be able to have a noise standard that they apply to, whether it's industrial machinery or it's freeway noise or it's street noise or it's baseball fields or it's pickleball or it's tennis, or the literally hundreds of things that fall under a noise ordinance. And if they are compelled to have a different noise ordinance for each situation, that makes their situation, so, as you can imagine, so much more difficult than to have one noise ordinance that applies, and then to try the best you can to mitigate that. There's already been significant mitigation from the standpoint of the very restrictive hours on the court. Every day there are numbers of hours that could be used on the courts with additional daylight that is part of the agreement the pickleball players don't play in order to try to accommodate the noise issue for the neighbors. So there's already a very significant mitigation. Perhaps there are others. My caution would be to work diligently to try to not set up new additional noise standards. Thank you very much for your attention on this.
Thank you. Karen Quimby.
Hi, Commissioners. I also, my name is Karen Quimby. I'm a third-generation Ojai resident, and I'm a member of the Citizens for Sound Pickleball policy. And I am representing both property owners. My parents own the apartments directly across from the pickleball courts on Ventura Street. And so I'm representing them as well as the tenants who live there, who have been enduring 7 hours a day, 365 days a year of this repetitive impulse sound, popping, popping, popping for 7 hours a day, 365 days a year. So first of all, I just want to say how appreciative I am for all of you, the ad hoc committees, especially for your thoroughness in studying the issue. I just can't even tell you how much I appreciate that. And we too want to coexist with the pickleball players. We think pickleball is a great sport, and I think we can find a place that is a win-win situation where it's far enough away from residences, where it's not bothering neighbors, and pickleball players can play to their heart's abandon. Last meeting, I made the request to include members of our committee in the process of selecting the acoustical engineer to study the noise issue. I didn't get a response to that, but I'm glad to hear that you have developed a request for proposal, and I'd like to actually request a copy of that request, RFP, to take a look at, if that's possible. I just want to say, finally, I have made numerous complaints of the players out here who are not adhering to the green paddle rule that is posted out at the courts. And I've done it on the city app, and I get a message that says, we'll get back to you in 10 days on that. So, and there's been no enforcement of that green paddle rule that is posted out there. And most of the players don't even know about it. So I just wanted to say that our neighbors, our tenants are enduring the sound, and with all haste, we look forward to the acoustical engineer who can appropriately measure the repetitive impulse sounds that drives people crazy. Thank you.
Ms. Quimby, I'm sorry, what is the date of the complaint? You said I missed it on the app?
I've had numerous complaints. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you said it.
They're all
Okay.
recorded, on the city.
Okay.
Been-
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Luis, are you the person to request the RFP of?
Correct.
Okay, so if you email Luis, you should be able to get a copy of the RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Leonard? Help me with your last name. Cleef. Thank you.
It was C-L-A-Y.
Okay,
with
thank
an
you.
F. Leonard Clay, 412 North Fulton Street. I'm only a first generationer, but it's been 30 years now.
Welcome.
And I too am a member of the Citizens for Sound Pickleball Policy. As a lawyer, I represented Mr. McRae in the negotiations for the city, which resulted in the temporary reduced hours, which expire, I don't know, a year or two from now, and pickleball players can go out there and pickleball all day and all night, to the distress of people in the neighborhood. Mr. McFall mentioned that it's a new noise. It's not so much that it's a new noise. It's an extremely obnoxious noise. And all you have to do to be convinced of that is Google pickleball, and you will see endless disputes in every city where it started if the city puts it close to where people live. This time around, it's, as Mr. McRae indicated, it sort of snuck in. Nobody knew what it was. I'm not sure if the neighbors were even notified. This time around, it's not going to get snuck in. And the Citizens for Sound pickleball policy includes some people who live right here, and a couple others who have been drawn into this matter for whatever reason. But when you start trying to put it into a new neighborhood, believe me that the number of members of the Citizens for Sound Pickleball policy will grow quickly. I would ask, as has been done, that whoever you hire to do the sound is capable of doing testing repetitive impulse sound. And that is critical. Because the pickleball sound spikes so quickly, normal readings using a normal sound meter just don't work because it's such a short, loud noise. The other thing I wanted to say, and I don't want to pick on anybody, but Mr. McFall's the one who talked about it being a new sound. I would ask rhetorically and metaphorically of Mr. McFall and everybody else who likes to play pickleball. Let's assume that you had a vacant lot next door to where you live, and the city proposed to put the pickleball court right there. How many of you pickleball players would be in favor of that? My guess is none. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Leslie Rule, our last speaker on this item, unless I have online.
We do have one.
Oh, we do have one. You had requested that you go last. Did you want to go?
Thank you.
have-
There's somebody online?
I have
Sure,
one
go
person
ahead.
online.
I'll go last.
Okay.
So Chair will go ahead and bring community member Peter Pick. And Peter, can you confirm you can hear us, please?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Peter Pick. I'm also a member of the Citizens for Sound Pickleball Policy. I had some prepared remark, but I wanted to respond to a couple of things that were said instead. One suggestion was made that moving pickleball to Libby Park would resolve the sound issue, and I would take objection to that comment. I think it would aggravate the sound issue because Libby Park is situated lower, sound rises, travels up, and there would be a new set of neighbors that would be impacted by that move. And it might improve for the people who are currently right next to the court, but I think a larger set of citizens would be impacted if you moved to Libby Park. The second comment was that, the people that live in the neighborhood are enjoying a quiet lifestyle, and that the start of pickleball there changed that, and it's just kind of a process that we get used to. And again, I think that is incorrect. Living near Libby Park and in that area near the bowl is not a quiet lifestyle at all. We listen to concerts, we listen to the tennis tournament, we listen to the people who are in the park every weekend. There's a celebration of some kind. And the people who live there do not have a problem with that. We know that that's part and parcel of living in the village. And in all these things that go on, pickleball stands out. Everyone who lives there, you ask, will say, this is different from everything else that we hear, and we can't handle it. And if you listen to the sound, if you ever go down to the court and just stand there, and you imagine yourself living a couple hundred feet from there and trying to do a conference call or trying to read a book or trying to do some work that requires concentration, it just doesn't go together. And then the final comment was one that said, that we're trying to develop a new noise standard for pickleball, and that is also not correct. The fact that we don't measure impulse sound in our current noise ordinance, or that it's not explicitly called for, is sort of a gap. And impulse sounds don't occur very frequently. They are like gunshots or explosions. My neighbor recently put a roof on his house, and the roofer was using a nail gun. And we went out there with a rather sophisticated sound meter, and we could not measure the sound from the nail gun because that's an impulse sound. The sound is so short that the microphone literally cannot measure the pressure wave that comes at it. And that's exactly the sound that a pickleball makes. And so as you go about this RFP, please make sure that the engineer you hire knows about impulse sound. It's not a sound we encounter very frequently, and that's why we don't deal with it frequently. But in this case, we need to be aware of it and we need to measure it accurately. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you.
And Chair Taylor, we have one more speaker on Zoom that recently joined.
Please.
And community member Mark Bodycomb. Mark, can you confirm you can hear us, please?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks for this time. I, again, just like several others, have said thank you to the Rec Committee and the Ad Hoc Committee for all the work that you're doing. Again, I'm sure this is just a difficult issue to address. Like many of the speakers, I just want to talk about some of the previous comments that have been made. I am part of the pickleball community. I play pickleball 4 or 5 times a week. And I think the things, one, I want to thank you again for your efforts in trying to find an equitable win-win type of solution to this. I do understand that there are neighbors that are nearby, but I think, again, the city and the pickleball community has gone to great lengths to try to mitigate those sounds, whatever the nature of those sounds are. I think that the speaker before who talked about the fact that this is just a natural progression of activities which you have dealt with in the past before, with the development of other parks, of the skate park downtown, the things you're talking about now, you know, with improvements to Sarasota. All of those have impacts on neighbors. And that, honestly, my perspective is that's just a natural progression of recreational activities in Ojai. And I would urge you to keep that at the forefront of your thinking. I mentioned last time I was at the meeting, like Leslie Clark did, that there is an alternative. I happened to be in Austin, Texas a few months ago and played pickleball at a facility that had courts that were dual lined for both tennis and pickleball. They actually had a process for sometimes pickleball players had it, you signed up and that kind of thing. And I think Leslie's recommendation to perhaps dual line some of the lower Libby courts might be a viable alternative initially. I think I feel very strongly about the fact, and I understand, I guess, the issues around comments around impulse noise, but sound, you know, rules are sound rules, and they need to be equally and equitably applied to all sports. I play soccer, I play all sorts of sports in Ojai at different facilities, public facilities, and they're all noisy. And I understand there's an effort on the part of some of the speakers to differentiate between the noise that pickleball makes, but I would strongly suggest that noise is noise, and that there needs to be one standard applied in the city to any and all activities that take place. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for the efforts that you're putting forward. One last question I had, and I'm not expecting an answer, but I am curious. You know, I would assume as a citizen, I've lived here for 30 years, that the rec department or the committee would be supportive of trying to engage and bring new activities to Ojai. And we never really hear about kind of where are you guys at? What do you guys really think about? You know, are you fundamentally behind pickleball being a viable, growing sport in Ojai, understanding that we need to find the right location, the right solution? But if there's any way that I, as a citizen or other citizens, could have some idea of where you are just generally, you're supportive or you're not even supportive and whatever, that would be interesting to me and I'm sure to others. So thank you for letting me share my thoughts.
Thank you. Okay, Leslie Rule, you will, unless there's any new submissions. Oh, we have one more speaker. Leslie's just requested to go last, so come on up. Thank you. We'll honor that. That's not a problem. And Lori, you can speak now.
Okay, thank you.
Lori Johnson. Lori Johnson.
Out at the pickleball courts.
Okay.
I play. Oh, you can't hear me?
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you.
I play in Goleta because there's lights, and they have a mixed pickleball court, just FYI, besides maybe thinking outside the box of tennis too. But I think it's time that everybody thinks about working people being able to play pickleball. Get here at 5:30, it's not enough time a lot of times. And there's a lot of people that don't come because it's too late after 5:30, 6 o'clock to get here also. That's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. And before we move on to our last speaker, just a reminder that we're all here working towards a solution, and we need to respect everyone's opinion. And if you're at the podium giving a comment, that's your time, and please be respectful to the speakers and to the commission. And if you'd like to speak, please submit a card. Ms. Leslie Rule.
My apologies. It really was a joke. Bad news. So, and Lori, by the way, has written a letter, I think, once a month asking for play after work. I mean, she writes a letter every month because she works a normal job and can't play. So just to note that. So I'm going to speak to a couple of things that have been spoken to. One is the noise. You can split hairs about noise. You can say, you know, This is a different kind of noise. Well, yeah, it is a different kind of noise. A dog bark is different than a car's backfire. A crack of an aluminum bat is different than a horseshoe clang. Every sound is different, and it would be a tangle if you were to determine a new sound standard for a particular sport. It would be a planning nightmare. I was on a planning board for a while. It would be a nightmare. And anyone can say, well, this sound is different. That dog barking that's different than your kids talking. Yeah, true, but. So I think we need to be really cognizant of how finally we're going to split those hairs and what we're going to call them. So that's one point I wanted to reiterate that I thought was a very well-made point. I've Googled pickleball many times, and I've never come up with a noise problem. Just want to point that out. So just for context, and I'm sure you know this, and thank you for all your work, by the way. I have been on planning boards and school boards and boards, community boards. I know how much work it is. So thank you very much for that. And if I come off a little bit strong, I apologize. I don't mean it. So I just want to basically repeat your mission statement so that you, just for context for everyone here. So the mission statement for the Recreation Department is, the Ojai Recreation Department seeks to enhance the physical and mental well-being of Ojai citizens by creating and offering a wide variety of accessible activities. That is your mission statement. That is your job. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the pickleball survey and the master plan, very briefly. The master plan, that survey was done in 2017, and pickleball wasn't even a glimmer in anyone's eye. If we were to do that survey now, we would have pickleball at the top of the list. Just as the numbers run, I wanted to point out, okay. Scrolling. Okay, so that survey, the master plan survey for sports and fitness for adults, sports, fitness, and recreation for adults, 57 people said they never engage in it in the public courts or public parks. 46 people said they occasionally do, and 42 people said often. Now I would like to contrast that with pickleball numbers. Of the 155 people that responded in the survey, about 15 people played more than 6 times a week. 120 people played between 2 and 5 times a week. And then, there were lots and lots and lots that played 0 to 1 times a week. And those were people that actually went online and filled out the survey. We also have people coming all the time who have never played before, who bring their families. July 4th, we had families come play. So those numbers don't even really represent the state of this sport. So in closing, that's really what I want to say. And also, I know that there is a committee of pickleball people, whatever their group's name is. I'm sorry, I think I wrote it down somewhere. But how many people are actually affected? How many tenants are actually affected? How many people have actually complained? I mean, you can get your friends and neighbors. I could get my neighbors, I could get my friends, I could get 20 people down here to say pickleball is great and only I play. But I would ask you to really look at the reality of the situation. How many people are actually affected? I know that I've walked it out. The nearest property behind the pickleball court is 2/3 of a football field away. You're going across the street. Is it 1 tenant? Is it 2 tenants? Is it 5 tenants? Like, how many people are really complaining? The squeaky wheel really should not be the thing that determines how this plays out. We're talking about numbers and health and wellness and basically the future of paddle and ball play in Ojai. So I would hope that you would keep that in mind as you move forward and really look at the numbers and the actuality of what's happening. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Do I have any other, I don't have any other speaker cards. I don't believe I've received any other hands raised online.
Nope.
Any other members of the audience wish to submit a speaker card for this item? Okay. And just a reminder, the commission is here to receive your comments. We're not ignoring them by not responding. Our role is to receive the information and then we process it, and the ad hoc committee certainly is aware of what the information and how it filters through. So thank you. We have our next presentation, which is 7B. Just a note before we go forward, it's a pool ad hoc committee update. Those of you who were present at the last meeting, we had some discussion and recommendation to establish an ad hoc committee, and it originally was going to be Intner and myself, but even though Commissioner Walker is not present with us tonight, he did request and volunteered to step up and participate in that commission. So I personally wanted to thank him for that. Again, for those of you who watched last week or last month, that wasn't something that I was really wanting to do. So I appreciate him stepping forward. And Commissioner Intner is going to give us the update on the first ad hoc. Or I'm sorry, Luis is going to give us the update on the first ad hoc meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so thank you for sharing that update. To build on that, on June 29th, the ad hoc committee members and I met to determine key goals and brainstorm questions that, when answered, would help the commission make a well-rounded recommendation. During the meeting, it was determined that an aspect of the recommendation could be brought forward for the commission's consideration while other aspects be formulated. The aspect that was determined to be brought forward was a use of the new pool for aquatic programming, such as what was provided in the past by the Recreation Department, as seen as in Attachment A. The aquatic program would include youth and adult swim lessons, lap swim, as well as public swim, and it could definitely be developed from there. In order to make the program available, a swim instructor as well as various lifeguards would be needed. The Recreation Department has begun to recruit to fill these positions, and at this time, we have yet to receive applications from qualified candidates for these positions. In addition, we may need to adjust wages to stay competitive with neighboring municipalities, as well as state minimum wages. So to that end, the cost in participating in the program would need to be adjusted slightly to make sure that the program could remain sustainable. And of course, before making any adjustments to any fees, staff would do comprehensive research and bring it before the commission for consideration. And so in a little bit of a nutshell, that was what was determined in the meeting. Now the committee is doing additional research for best practices on shared use facilities, and we'll have more of an update at the next meeting. And with that, I can kick it over to Commissioner Intner.
There's also more has happened at the school district since the time that we had our meeting.
I was
Because
gonna ask if you
they've had
should
two
share
meetings
that.
since then. And what came of that was a recommendation for a 35-meter pool.
Versus 50.
Versus
right?
50 with co-access, I think is the term that they're using now, which is the only use by outside providers, but would be at the city or the Y or whoever would do that, purveyors of services, would be when there are no students at the
No
facility.
students.
No students.
No students at all.
That's
So
the
no
recommendation.
mixed use whatsoever.
No. And the recommendation was that they would be able to program 40 hours a week.
Before school or after school?
It wasn't clear.
essentially?
It wasn't defined, and it was, from the discussion, sounds like it wouldn't be totally consistent, which would make sense because they have different sports at different times, and it's not going to be a consistent access for the community. It'll be what's available when students aren't using it. But what they were proposing is that they thought that that would be about 40 hours a week.
Okay.
So,
And wasn't there a location change? I thought I saw that right from kind of more towards the,
the existing pool is there, and instead the tennis courts are up there and the basketball courts, they would move it into that area, farther
versus
forward.
over in the parking lot, over by
Right,
the
they did not
entrance.
opt. The recommendation that was adopted was not toward the street. It would
Towards the-
be inside where the existing outdoor basketball courts are. That was the proposal. So as far as the interest in recommending and moving forward from our commission, that yes, summer aquatics is something we know how to do and we would like to do, and we have questions to answer, we would be interested in being involved in a summer aquatics program. And the things that were brought up by Luis are very important. It is really changing, getting staffing. There's really like this lost, the 2 years that we're down didn't develop new people. And you would have gotten a lot of the kids that would be the kids
That were in
training
the
the
senior
new
program,
yeah,
moving
exactly.
up.
There's this whole build that happens to come up with lifeguards and all of, these types of jobs. Ella would know, because she's been involved in those programs. So there's this huge gap. We have this loss, and I don't think we know how we're going to rectify that just yet. So there's a limited number of kids, and we're somehow gonna have to train a set to staff. Yeah, for staffing, for doing, because it's usually like they would do junior guards, and then they would get certified to do this type of lifeguarding, and they would come to us and work, and so that's a separate piece altogether
Right.
from the whole, whether we would be interested or not interested. But I think now it would be great for us to send questions to the school district and ask for more specificity about the 40 hours and what they think that would look like, and from month to month, because I mean, when water polo season is, and when swimming season is. Because Ella, they usually do morning workouts on some of that, don't they?
Yeah, because school times have been moved back a lot of, especially water polo. Actually, this whole year, boys water polo is fall, girls is winter, swim is in the spring, so.
So every
morning
season?
practice, yeah.
Okay, and there are morning
Or-
practices.
And school's moving back to 8:30, right?
8:30 now,
So
yeah.
the morning practices are still allowed, that's allowed to, even under the new rules, they can have their practice, sports can happen before 8:30?
At least, yeah, that's what, yeah.
So like for right now, you're doing it starts at 6 a.m.?
6 to 8 is been practices this past year.
So I think that would be a clarifying question that I think would be great to send to the, that we would need to send to the school district to even kind of clarify what it is you could program. And the after-school hours, it's the same thing, because they have practices after school too.
Yeah, so what's been happening this past year was varsity would go in the morning, JV would go in the afternoon, so it's like 6 to 8, or 6:30 to 8, something like that in the morning, and then it's like 4 to 5:30.
Okay.
Would be around the time.
So realistically, it would be after 5:30, and it
Right.
probably takes a half an hour to clear everything out, because there's no mix on the use, so you need to have the kids.
There
Six,
could
essentially.
also potentially be daytime.
No,
hours.
you mean like, no, because I think they made it clear at the board meeting, when children were on campus, or when they were present, like when school was in session, I think is how
Okay.
it was discussed, that there would be no community use
Right.
during those hours.
Right. Only,
And so weekends and potentially basically from 6
Yeah.
PM to 8 PM, I mean, that
that's
seems
2
really late
hours,
in the
5
morning.
days a week, and then.
Where are they
the
getting
2
40
weekend-
hours?
Yeah, so I think we need clarification on what they're,
Okay.
because I don't, to make a proposal to them to serve that, I don't,
There's no way. I mean, it would just be nice to be able to write back and request some clarification, because even at best, that's 10 hours Monday through Friday.
Right.
6 PM to 8 PM realistically. That's if there isn't a meet.
Right.
Right? So there's a big difference between, and then let's just say 10 hours, maybe 12 hours. On the weekends, that's 24. So, I mean, I guess 34 is really the most, and that's if there's no meet.
Right. And you guys host, when you have a new pool, it'll be great.
It just seems like that. I think that it's important to be transparent with the public that realistically, it's really only 20 hours a week. It seems like what would really be more realistic. And is there also some discussions from the ad hoc talking about the measure money, the measure is it J or K? Which,
We didn't get into that specifically. We're more focused on if we're going to propose to do like a summer program, let's get all the information that we can get
Okay.
about what that would
Right.
be.
Okay.
And if the new proposal is that there be programming during the week,
what would it look like?
let's respond to let's ask them for what they see the schedule being, and respond to that information as whether it's feasible or not. Because I think, again, they require, it sounds like a lifeguard, it's more than one staff
Right, multiple.
member to keep the program open. So that's the other, so.
Right.
As far as the summer programming, I think we might have some questions, but generally, we have a pretty firm grasp on what that would look like
Right.
for recreation to do that. And then the other, Luis has done some great searching in the attic, literally, for records. And some of the things he came up with that I thought were really useful, and we'll present it next time, is in 2002, there was a whole committee formed in the city here to try and do a pool with citizens. And they came up with a feasibility study and a plan, and I had never seen it before. It was before my time. Anyway, we'll present that to the whole committee in our next agenda. We just found, I think, like just recently.
Yeah, just recently.
And I think it was very informative just to their process and what they were thinking about and their reports and all of their information show. So I think as we're looking to what are the other possibilities, though that doesn't look like the direction that it's going as they've made a decision, I still think it's a reasonable endeavor for us to look at that information and look at what that might look like now.
Separate from the community pool, or separate from the school pool, or whatever they're
Well-
calling it. You're saying that this commission was formed to do a community pool. Kind of like we had a former ad hoc that was working on that, and then
Yes.
sort of we backed off because there was discussions with OUSD about that would be the community pool, but.
Yes, and this was a citizens group working with the redevelopment agency and with the commissioners and with the Parks and Rec manager.
But not the school.
You know,
I didn't see any mention
I didn't
of
see a
it.
name that
Right.
made me think that, but I can't speak to that. I've only read the report and I
Oh,
don't have
that'll
any
be
more
interesting.
information.
I'm excited to see that. So we'll put that on next month's agenda. Great.
Yeah, and so I'm hoping that by next month, we'll bring forward something to send back to the school district, because we'll have a little more information, and then we'll move forward on that, but continue to investigate these other avenues. And then, in response, it was in the report, in the Sarasota, as the survey they did there, really that's most helpful just to say that people have been, and still are, interested in a pool. It wasn't a detailed what type of pool, what size, when would you use it. It was more in the general understanding of what are people looking for in the way of recreation. That's what that response was in that master plan. And it was, people were interested, and it's been an ongoing, if you give them an opportunity to tell you, they'll tell you, yes, we really need a pool. So it's interesting to go back to this 2002 report and see so much of the same discussion.
So I think I asked this question last time, and I apologize for not remembering the answer, but if the city was to propose a summer aquatics program in the new school pool, is there does the school district charge the city a fee for using that facility for the city's programming?
Yes.
So that would be, have to be included in the overall budget.
Right.
Correct.
So, and given what you reported here about labor costs, and you said might have to raise fees slightly, but if you're on a kind of reduced or shortened time, I mean, would it only be a slight raise, do you think? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is ultimately, I think you got to look at the
We don't have
actual
enough
cost.
information to
Okay,
make
don't have
comments on
enough
that.
co- okay.
What we have enough information is to explain that we know how to run these programs.
Okay.
We're interested in running these programs. These are the things we would do, but anything we're making would need hard information
Okay.
on the cost to lease the facility. I mean,
Okay, so you have to get that information from the.
And they don't have that.
Oh, they don't have that,
No,
yeah,
no, they
okay.
don't have that.
Yeah, because okay.
Yes.
I'll hold my tongue.
Yeah, they don't have that information that I know of. I mean, we can request it, but I
don't think they have it.
I haven't seen it in any of the materials.
Okay.
They don't have it because they didn't do a feasibility study. That was
Yeah,
part of
that's
the
what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, it sounds like actually you guys have done well with
Luis has
little
been-
information.
Luis has been very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And a question, first of all, thank you. So for the summer, the part that you can address, which is kind of the summer programming, is that kind of implied to be for the entire summer break of
Yes.
the
Correct.
school district? Okay.
They did, there was some mention in the meeting of that they might need it for practices or something, but that was new to me. So historically, I think it's been, when the city has programmed it, they've just had it for the whole summer and programmed it.
Okay.
But, all that could be worked out.
Right. And then the other thing I noticed, you said you have been trying to recruit people, staff for this, but like, how are you recruiting if we don't have a pool?
So that's a great question. So one of the facilities that we do have access to is a Villanova pool.
Okay.
And so we reached out to them at the beginning of summer and inquired to see if we would be able to go ahead and utilize it. And they said it would be absolutely available to us.
Got it.
We just have to go ahead and submit proposed dates, so we could go ahead and work around that. To answer the second part of your question, how we're recruiting, we're doing it a couple different ways. Social media is one, and then city's
Is
website, which
more the first part of that.
Yep.
Right. Okay,
And-
thanks.
I think he was saying, why
Oh,
are you
gotcha.
recruiting if we don't have a facility?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Gotcha,
didn't
sorry.
realize that we had.
We had an
that.
option for a period of
Okay.
time,
Yeah.
but I think it is, and there are articles about this too. I mean, and Ella has people in her family working for the lifeguards and doing junior guards and stuff like that. They're having a hard time too.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a problem recently. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's true for everywhere in every industry right now is what we're seeing.
Unless there's another question?
Just one quick thing. In terms of the summer time, there are sports practices usually starting August for water polo. So I would say that's
That's-
Yeah.
being used
Okay.
that time. So
And that's, do they follow their same schedule, like 6 a.m., or do they do it more?
I
I'm just curious.
yeah, I think it's a little different in the summer. I don't play water polo, but a lot of my friends have had especially the boys practice, usually in the afternoon. It's probably a little different. It's only 2 hours, but they do usually have practices.
And that's probably determined by CIF when they're able to start in the summer.
Yeah,
That's
you
a
have to
set
have
date.
that 2-week
Yeah.
break time, which we had this past 2 weeks. So
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and unless there's any more commission discussion, I do have a public comment card, speaker card for Mr. O'Malley for 7B.
Good evening, Bill Miley. I'm part of a group in Ojai called Ojai Valley Together. And we were quite concerned about what was going to happen with the pool, whether it be a 50-meter, 35-meter, and how the school trustees were going to go about that. And we were hoping that they would do a feasibility study. And I think as maybe all of you know, they chose not to do that. It was $28,000, and the pool will cost 14 to 16 million. So we wrote them a letter prior to the last school board meeting, Wednesday ago, a two-page letter, very formal, listing all the issues we felt justified their revoting on a feasibility study. It was sent to them with a return receipt. We knew they got it. I took it over to them. So they got it. And the trustees said, in effect, we're not interested in your letter. We don't think it has any value. And several of them said actually that they felt it was quite hostile. So they went ahead and voted for, as you probably know, a 35-meter pool. So I'd like to say a couple of things about that. You may recall that in the bond issue, Bond K, in 2020, it said as one of the listed items that they were going to do, which was part of the legal document that they voted on, it said, construct a school and community aquatic center. So one of the trustees last Wednesday said publicly that the term aquatic center doesn't mean anything. It could mean a pool, doesn't matter. Our point was it does matter. And we looked it up and we went to a bunch of different places in California where they have aquatic centers and they're multiply function. They have multiple functions, not just a pool. Okay. So the problems when it comes down to a 50-meter or a 35-meter pool relative to what you're doing to program it, we think comes out like this. There's less space in a 35-meter pool for community use, for shallow ends, deep end. A school pool is designed for working out, maybe learning how to swim, but working out, polo, water polo, swim meets, da-dum-da-dum. And there have been commentary that A 50-meter pool is what you need for regional meets, not 35. Okay. And the last thing is, and you may know this, the temperature of a working pool and a recreation pool is different. The temperature of a working pool is about 80 degrees, and a recreation pool is 85. And that's a big difference for people who are not working out. They're there for water aerobics, learning how to swim, and 85 makes a huge difference. Thank you.
I like 87 in my pool, for the record, 87, and I agree, you can notice it. Let's see, I have no more speaker cards for this particular item, and I do not believe I have any speakers online.
Correct. No speakers online.
Okay. Unless there's any further discussion, we'll move on to our 7C, which is our multi-sport court update.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll.
We have a couple speaker cards for that as well.
Sure. Thank you. And we'll keep this one pretty brief. We do have some good news regarding the sports courts. Recently, we discovered that a soil study was indeed conducted for this project. The study was conducted by Heathcote Geotech in late March of 2020.
I'm sorry, what kind of study?
Soil studies.
Sorry, it would help if I turned my microphone on. I didn't hear a soil study.
Soil
Okay.
study, correct. Yeah, and that was the last report that we were waiting on.
Okay.
There was a drainage study that was reviewed and everything looked well there. And the soil study, that was one that we were pending in order to go ahead and move the project onto the next phase. And we were having a little bit of trouble locating that, whether one was completed or not, but we discovered that one was completed. And so we actually ended up sending that over to Stantec, who is currently reviewing it. They did just an initial review of it, and they said everything looked pretty good. They're going to go ahead and do a more comprehensive look into the report, and they're going to go ahead and let us know if there's any concerns. It's actually pretty good because that report in itself saves about $6,000 to $8,000 on the project. Now, one of the things that was noted by Stantec is that if there's no concerns, we could definitely go ahead and move the project onto its next phase, which would be putting the RFP together for construction. And it is anticipated that we should have an answer from Stantec within the next 2 to 3 weeks or so on that. So,
Great.
yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I have 2 speaker cards. Tim Kraut is first, submitted first on 7C.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, staff. First of all, I want to thank the Commission for spending your time and effort trying to create more recreation for the community. I know that sometimes that takes years to accomplish. I've seen it. Special thanks, I want to thank Sage for the many years that she has dedicated to this commission. I've always thought your comments and insights were very productive and right on topic. Also, I'm glad to see that the City Council approved additional funding for the multi-sport court from Measure C funds. Hope that goes planned as well. I understand that this court is in the final design stages, which may be time to consider the orientation of the court. It should be placed north and south versus east and west. This is in consideration of the sun. All the present courts in town run north and south for that very reason. I hope that the multi-sport court gets used by the community as much as our pickleball courts are used out here. People are now waiting to play. Hopefully, you won't have the neighbor opposition that we have had with the pickleball courts. Perhaps some prior canvassing the neighbors before construction starts might help. Just some thoughts.
Thank you. And we have Leslie Rule on 7C as well. Just a reminder, please keep with the 3 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Just very briefly, I think that that's great news. I had read about the soil report, so that's like excellent. I live very, very close to the park. So, and Lori, who spoke, she had said she had recently seen where basketball courts were also multi-use for pickleball courts as well. So I just wanted to kind of point out that single use kind of has had its day, plastic, the whole thing. So anytime that you can multi-use is better, and it might be possible to do that there, given that it's already a park. It might be something to consider as you're moving forward with an RFP. I don't know, but we really need the lights. We need to be able to play at times when it's cooler, and people that are, compromised or whatever can play a little bit longer. From 11 o'clock to really 5 o'clock, it's super hot for a lot of people. So lights would be a godsend. So my request would be that you consider potentially multi-use with the basketball, futsal, and potentially pickleball courts, or repurposing one of those dual in another way. So thank you very much.
And since it is a discussion item, I can speak to the extensive discussion that we've had. And we can certainly put it on agenda to have further discussions, but the orientation of the courts was discussed at great detail. We are all aware. I mean, my husband plays basketball, and he was not happy with me when I discussed the orientation, but we did discuss it extensively. It was not our first choice, but to salvage if memory serves correctly, it had to do with salvaging the softball fields and just the space itself. If we wanted 2 courts, it just simply didn't fit to go north and south. We would have only been able to have 1, if I remember correctly.
And it's bordered by that beautiful oak tree,
yeah.
which we're being really conscientious of not getting too close to. And so we looked at it every which way. They went out and staked it and tried.
We tried. It was just too far.
Lots of iterations.
To get 2 courts was too far into the outfield. And then also there is lights. We really fought hard for that, and I hope that that recommendation was approved, right? Is that still in the plan? Okay, so it is lights, and it's a specialty lighting, if I remember correctly, because LED, and it was specific to that area to not impact the neighbors.
Correct.
For nighttime play. Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
and as we move on to our next item, can we bring the master plan and discussion back at our next meeting as we move forward? I think that'd be good for the community to just get a refresh on what we've discussed. And I know COVID kind of put us back on, we were kind of moving, we've had it on every agenda item thus far. So I think this is probably a good time to bring that back to the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, no more speakers. Okay, and 7D, we have our internship program update.
Thank you. Just give it a minute.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. So this one, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible and just give a summary of the staff report. And that summary is following the last Parks and Recreation Commission meeting on June 6th, staff reached out to the Nordhoff High School, College, and Career Counseling Specialist, Ms. Brianna Beebe, and in discussing the city's internship program and the commission's desire to expand it, Ms. Beebe did indicate that the school would be interested in partnering with the recreation department to provide opportunities for high school students to participate in the program. The only requirement that was expressed by Ms. Beebe was that the department be flexible with hours to allow students to focus on their academics. In addition to that, staff did look into the requirements that the city would need to go ahead and meet in order for minors to go ahead and participate in the program. Staff was able to go ahead and find some pretty comprehensive information on the State of California Department of Industrial Relations website pertaining to child labor laws, school attendance, wages, work hours, as well as employer requirements. And in a nutshell, and a summary of this information can be seen in attachment A as well as the link there on the report. But in a nutshell, work permits would be required even during the summer months. In addition, there would be limited hours of participation. If it were to go during school times, it would be limited to 4 hours per day, and then non-school times, it would be 8 hours per day. best practice would be to go ahead and compensate the interns based off of what was found on the website here. If the commission does wish to go ahead to make a recommendation to council to modify the program, staff does recommend some of the changes, or some changes to the entire program, as well as some requirements. Requirements as seen in the report, which staff recommends, is that applicants wanting to participate in the internship program, that they're able to successfully complete an application, be enrolled in an accredited high school or continuing school, and must be at least a junior, have a grade point average of 2.5 on a 4.0 grade scale, eligible to work in the United States legally, secure a permit from school, and then commit to a minimum of 4 weeks in the program. And then modification to the program would be that the program be converted from an unpaid program to a paid program, which would be set at the state minimum wage. Now, if the commission does wish to go ahead and make that recommendation, the next step would be for staff, myself, to go ahead and meet with the city manager to go ahead and put the agenda item on a council agenda for consideration. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the commission for any questions or comments.
Yeah, I had a question about the changing from unpaid to paid. 'Cause my understanding is that it is legal to have unpaid internships. And it seems like, and there's kind of a Department of Labor kind of test for determining when unpaid is acceptable, and it's roughly that it's benefiting the intern, not the the agency. And it seems like that's what we're talking about here, is that we're looking for opportunities for students to learn and be a part of. And if that's the case, then kind of moving to paid might kind of shoot us in the foot if we don't, then it's a funding or budget thing to kind of pay people, and then why not just hire people? So I was just kind of wondering what the thinking was.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point that you go ahead and bring up. So one of the things that we did is we looked at an array of different cities and counties for models and best practices that they did. And you are correct. There are unpaid volunteer internships, or unpaid internships, and they're called volunteer internships. However, that really you really walk a fine line, especially based off of the document that has been provided in the along with the staff report, which indicates that minors must be paid at least the state, or at least the minimum wage established by the Industrial Welfare Commission. Excuse me. Now, currently it's at $14. The state minimum wage is $15. And speaking with a couple of human resource representatives from different agencies, because it's such a fine line where you could put the agency, for lack of better words, where the agency can get in trouble, it's best to go ahead and opt for the paid rather than the unpaid. And that's why that recommendation was made, to go ahead and make it into a paid program. Essentially, if we do go ahead and move forward, it wouldn't be until next summer. So we do have some time to go ahead and put a request into council for consideration for budgeting. And that's the reason why it was recommended to do a paid versus unpaid.
Well, why wouldn't you just call it staff then? I mean, what's the point?
Yeah,
of
right.
the-
Right, yeah.
And that's what I
Right.
agree with Commissioner Firestone. And I recall 30 years ago having an intern program through Nordhoff, and I used them. I had several, and they really benefited. It was they really weren't ready for jobs,
Right.
And it supported them to actually become employed. It gave them that experience with the expectation that they were an intern, they were unpaid, they were learning. I just don't see that.
Well,
I don't know. I just
do you think it's part of you mentioned that you can have volunteer interns,
Correct.
which could also be from the high school and might have different age limitations. and they might not get paid. And the city absolutely has to categorize every job they have and classify it and be very
That's correct.
specific about what's going to happen in that particular job set. So I don't know that I don't think it's an either or. For me, it seems like it should be both of these options. I do understand that, like you were saying, 16-year-olds and older, because they have to have a work permit, and those
Right.
are the rules. And so you could be a 16-year-old and still do some of the other volunteering internships if that's what you're better prepared for. And then if you're ready to take on that next level of experience and you're 16 or over, then we could have both. But I think the program would have to
Are you
be,
saying both as?
you could have employed and volunteer.
Right.
And how you write up the descriptions of how you're going to, what skill sets you're going to expect from them and what skill sets you hope to give them. That could kind of define, and then I think this is the difference too, for a paid internship, it's very competitive. I mean, typically that's a competitive process, which is absolutely fine, and I don't have any problem with that. But for a kid who's not ready for the competitive process, can we have a volunteer process? And I'm just gonna use, and this is, I don't know that this is how it would come out at all, but so you're doing camp.
Correct.
Like often you have a junior camp counselor who is a person who's coming there in an internship who could be younger or could be older but hasn't done it and is looking for an experience. And that's one set. And then you have a camp counselor. And the camp counselor has maybe either already been a junior counselor or has some other experience they bring to it, and they then could be a paid counselor and would be a great asset to the city and help maybe find with the staffing. And, you know, I kind of feel like it needs to be addressing both of those options.
Sure. One of the things that we could go ahead and do, and this is, of course, research done at a staff level, but one of the things that we could go ahead and do is reach out to the city attorney's office, go ahead and collaborate with them to have a best practice for a volunteer internship. We do have the different volunteer opportunities which they could go ahead and do in such programs such as the camp program. But I think, if memory serves me right, it was the commission's desire to have something more formal that high school students could go ahead and put on their resume. And so that's why we're looking to go ahead and do an internship. So based off of that research, this is what we found. But I'm happy to reach out to the city attorney's office to see how we could go ahead and make it possible.
And
I wouldn't want to put the city in any liability.
Absolutely understand. That makes sense.
Yes.
So, if I remember correctly, the city already has a college level intern program.
That is correct, yes.
And that's unpaid,
Yes,
right?
unpaid, yes.
Okay, so if this were expanded to high school students and there was a paid component, I think that gets a little complicated
Well-
too,
Yeah,
because, you know, high school students making minimum wage, college students making minimum wage, I mean, you know,
Or nothing, yeah.
or nothing, their experience level is different. But I think in terms of, I sort of have the same concerns Ryan has. I think, and I understand the difference between a volunteer and it's a benefit for them versus a more of a paid position and it's more of a staff position. And I think it's a good idea for the department to have paid part-time positions, perhaps dedicated or reserved for, say, 16 and up or something like that. But if you wanted to have a formal program that really was more attractive to high school students, then I think it has to be tied in more closely with their academics or through the counselor. That it has to be something more, a more rigid program, and it does have to meet that idea of it's benefiting the intern.
Right.
So it wouldn't necessarily have to be a paid position, but it could be very much tailored in conjunction with the counselor and, perhaps other faculty to develop specific skills for these students. And that would be a little more palatable to me. I'm hesitant to move forward with a program that's going to cost money.
Well, I think
That we
council's
maybe
had
don't
some
have it.
discussions on this, haven't they?
They did.
That
They
might
d-
be
y-
informative if you haven't watched the meetings to.
Correct.
If you want to recap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I apologize. I was watching it, but I was hearing it in
Yeah.
the background. I was doing other things, so I don't have the full specifics of what happened in that meeting. But essentially, there was a conversation putting a budget aside for a particular program. If memory serves me right, there was going to be additional discussions, but I could be wrong on it.
I think they were hoping to hear from
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that based on my experience, and, you know, I'm certainly not something to ask legal, but we can't earmark employee positions for a specific age group because it's discriminatory. We can have an intern program that is in conjunction with the high school. And again, in my experience, that those types of intern programs are unpaid. If we, I mean, just apply some logic, if we have a current college program that's unpaid, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to mirror those same guidelines.
Yeah, and I think sorry to interrupt.
I just think that we need more clarification, on that, but I know that there's no violation of law to have an intern program that's unpaid. I mean, I think that's the point of it.
I will say, though, that is a changing trend.
It is.
Definitely very much a changing trend in college and just in general. The whole idea of unpaid internships it's not like when we were doing it.
Yeah.
Things have really
can we,
changed within this environment. So that's the legal question.
Right.
And that's what needs to go to
Table this
legal.
then, and
Well,
let's bring it back at our next meeting.
But maybe we send it out for legal to ask the questions
Yeah.
that we've already asked, because I think that would be very clarifying for us. If this is something you need to do,
Right.
because the
laws have
the way
changed.
and the perspective on it has changed a
Right,
lot too.
the expectation.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when we were coming out of school, it was an expectation you do an unpaid internship.
Right.
That is no longer the expectation.
Okay.
No, I agree. It is a trend that's been gathering momentum for quite some time, actually.
Yeah.
And as I recall the city council discussion, and I am kind of going off the top of my head, I do think that there was this interest in sort of more kind of entry-level job training opportunities within the city that could involve city departments as well as private employers. I think, we already have this internship program, and I think if there's a way to expand it, and if it is going to require a pay, then that is something to consider, but I think we need more information.
Yeah,
And we
absolutely.
need to look at it very carefully. I'd like to know, like, what's the participation level in the current program? How many college students do we get every year applying? How many do we actually put in positions? So that information would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't think we have to take on because the other part of it, and I don't know if it was mentioned that night, but, for many different times, there's been various job training programs that cities and private employers and nonprofits could tap into, often federal and state money, to pay, to match wages. Like work study in universities. The department that wants to hire the person pays half, and the federal government pays half. And it's minimum wage. And that's, but it's a paid, they're called work study, sometimes they're called internships, but I don't know that cities necessarily go take on programs like this when they don't have a more obvious funding partner.
But I think that isn't our question.
Yeah, it's not our
This
question.
is not ours to answer. I mean,
No.
it's ours to discuss maybe, but if
Right.
council is interested, and we're tasked with looking
Right.
at this, which we have been,
Right.
I think that's a council level question,
Right, so
from my perspective.
Yeah, so I was just I think we
Yeah.
focus on what we already have and whether that program as it stands could be expanded, or what would it take to make it a viable program.
And
Right.
for me, the interest is partnering with the high school.
Yeah.
And Ella, do you have things you'd like to speak to on this? Because I think.
Well, I think, okay, two things. I think if you kind of change the mindset to a mentorship program, you might have a little more leeway with that.
Yep.
So, and also another thing is if you have an internship program, kids are getting if they're getting a job, they're getting a job because they want to have some money, they want to save up for things. So I don't know if they're necessarily going to choose that position over being a waiter or waitress somewhere else. So I think if we don't have to stress about that too much, I think, in terms of pull, because I don't think it's going to pull a lot of kids. But if you kind of change it into a mentorship program where kids have a little bit more flexibility in terms of hours and get to actually have some training, have someone who they can kind of look up to, I think that might help a lot.
I think that's great, and I think that's the volunteering part too,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And I also think we're talking about two different times. We're talking during the school year, which is
Yeah.
great mentoring. I mean, it's still hard for kids.
Yeah.
But they're looking for those experiences, they're looking for their hours, right?
Right, yeah.
So if they can get hours from the city, right, all that stuff. And then, I think you're right, it's not every kid who's gonna want the paid internship, but those that already are very interested in city government, public
Yeah.
works, engineering, there are a lot of places that they could plug in for those kids specifically with some more focused interests. And I think that's kind of the benefit from my perspective, is opening up those doors where they are getting mentorship, but they have enough skills, they come in and provide some support and just get an exposure. But,
Yeah.
so I don't know how much this has helped you.
Yeah. No. It absolutely has. And, and I can answer some of the questions that were raised. But more specifically, one of the things I do want to go ahead and touch base on is the conversation with Miss Brianna Beebe. And this was just my perception, I very well could have perceived it wrong, is initially when we were having the conversation, sharing information about the city's internship and expanding it, there was a hesitation in moving to open it up at the entire city, because that was my initial thought, is doing things for public works, community development, finance, things of that nature. There was a little bit of hesitation there, and so when we mentioned the recreation department, there seemed to be a little bit more openness to it.
Hesitation on Ms. Beebe's side?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct. So one of the things I will go ahead and do is I'll go ahead and clarify that, make sure that I understood that correctly. But I think that that's going to be.
Because I think a lot of what the city has to offer is the diversity of things that happen in the city and the diversity of types of jobs. It's amazing, all the different things that you touch upon running a municipality, city.
Yeah, and I think one of the points that Commissioner Ruff brought up is a very good one, and that's a mentorship. If it's focused on a mentorship, with an internship, there's certain requirements that you have to go ahead and meet. Like Commissioner Firestone mentioned, it has to be more of a benefit to the participant than the actual city, and we can't displace any work that's being done from other staff members. So if we approach it in that manner, then we have a little bit more flexibility. It would be easier to go ahead and do, and we could definitely go ahead and do an unpaid versus that way, rather than calling it an internship. The internship, that term internship, is what really put some restrictions.
Mentorship. Good job, Bella.
Excellent. But I also think, it doesn't mean you don't have the internships. It means that we're talking about.
It gives the staff more flexibility.
Yeah, they have
and to work with the
options.
counselors.
Right.
And okay, so can you clarify for the commission? We'll put this on the agenda for next month. Clarify with the school and also with legal about what our expectations are.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
those.
Now,
Great.
I gotta know, as we know, they are on summer break, so I might not get a response.
It might not be the right time.
Right, from the school. I'll definitely keep in touch with Chair, and if we have that response and all the information, we could definitely bring it back.
And from my perspective, I'd be interested to know from legal, like, is having an unpaid internship acceptable? So certainly, maybe we could call it something else, like a mentorship, but I'd also like to know specifically, like, is an unpaid internship acceptable? Because I think that's the thing, like, if what they're getting out of this is being able to put it on their resume in part, or their,
College
internship sounds good, right? Mentorship, I don't know if it has that same weight.
In any regards, one of the things that the city, speaking for the city, I'm sure that the city would be happy to go ahead and do is write a letter of recommendations indicating,
Gail mentioned that was something that she did for all of those types of positions that we had, like the youth commission, right? You get a certificate of participation, I assume it is, right?
That's exactly what we've done. And just kind of answer some of your questions, Commissioner Wilson. So we've had, if memory serves me right, putting on my other hat, I also serve as the city's human resource technician.
Great.
So we've had 4 applicants for the college internship program. Only one of them actually has gone through the entire process. Others have withdrawn. So that one candidate did complete a 6-week program, if I'm not mistaken, and they did that in finance department.
And the county does this. Mm-hmm. They have
they call
positions.
Summer out the county.
Mm-hmm. And
And they have They're actually one of the agencies that I had reached out to and spoke with. And so they have both. They have unpaid versus paid. And in that conversation, they said the paid is their primary program. Yeah.
Well, thank you for all the research. I think it's very exciting, and I think it's exciting to have an opportunity to work with the high school and you know, get a program together and start, and then it'll start to, you know, it'll become clear, I think, as you start,
And
what
maybe
they're
even
looking
a
for, what the
little
kids are
competitive,
looking
too.
for. Yeah.
Mhm.
And what, you know, and how to be partners. So, but I'm really excited about this.
Great.
As am I. I think, you know, this is really going to help bridge that gap where, you know, we had junior participants in programs and they would go on to senior. It's going to bridge that gap in closing, you know, having us have more people participate in the programs and help in the programs. So.
Great,
Ella,
thank you.
any other comments?
No, I'm good. I'm all commented out.
Okay. All right, we have one last agenda item or presentation. That is on the Sarasota Park Playground.
Yeah.
And before you give your update, I'll just say, as I was reading it and kind of going over it, the entire, in the back of my head, I'm thinking to myself, why isn't staff doing this, right? And then that's the bottom.
Yeah, and we
And I absolutely disagree.
Okay.
So, having been the steering committee chair for the playground build over there, when that happened, I don't know what you think, but I mean, even coming down to picking the equipment and being a participant in that, I volunteer already to be on this committee. I loved working on it.
I'll join you in volunteering, because I share your, you know, I think this would be a really interesting project to work on. And I think there's ways to get a good community involvement. And I think, you know, work with staff.
When that
Louise,
playground.
please give your report.
Oh,
I feel a motion coming quickly, so please get this in so we can make a motion.
Absolutely. I'll keep it pretty brief.
Give us those cliff notes for the
Yeah,
public listening.
absolutely. So as part of the Sarasota Master Plan, there are 2 playgrounds which are scheduled to be installed. The first one has been budgeted for this fiscal year 22-23, and that's a total of $210,000. And the second one has been scheduled for 23-24 fiscal year, and $235,000 has been allocated for that. So staff's recommendation is that the commission consider forming an ad hoc committee to co-create design concepts for the playgrounds. And so some of the tasks that could be considered would be reaching out to neighboring cities. City of Ventura is, you know, is a great example. They recently redid one of their parks. For guidance on best practices, as well as recommendations on designs and what worked, what didn't work for them. And then alternatively, the commission could direct staff to take lead and come back with that. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the commission for questions or comments.
So I'll say, I think what's missing from that is the community input. Because that's, I think a lot of this comes down to kind of, what does the community want? We have Libby Park. Let's get some feedback on that. And given that we have that, you know, do we want this to be similar, completely different, or like, I think that's stuff that I don't think we can answer very well, but we want to hear from the community.
And I
Can we
think,
do a survey?
well, I will just, this is a little history, but when we did the big playground and the design build and all that, we went to schools and met with every single class, and they all had design charrettes. It was probably one of my favorite things I have ever done and been involved with the commission. You were too young. Yeah. Okay, because we went classroom to classroom and did design charrettes, and the kids, they had the designers design their own parks and all the elements they wanted. I don't know if we still have them, but they were fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
The kids drew and imagined, and some of the things that are out there were not done anywhere. This was the first place they were designed, and they came directly from those kids' drawings. I don't know that that's the process we're going to go through again, but even if it's a process of going to the classrooms and presenting different types of, like, you know, the rope mazes and those kind of webs, or, I mean, because they love the merry-go-round over there. I mean, so we could, you know, whatever it is, I think that is a huge part of it, and people do enjoy being involved, and there are ways definitely to engage the kids and the community.
I think that we learned a lot from the Libby Park build, and I think that just based on observations, probably from commissioners and staff. We know what elements are attractive.
Absolutely.
You know, that are really, maybe there's not enough of certain swings or, you know, certain features that aren't being utilized as much as others. And I would think then if the commission is interested in supporting an ad hoc, to have those brought to the entire commission, and then we can engage the public in this forum with maybe some seed ideas, like option A, B, C, as kind of how I would,
And
just because we've done so much already, so much work on
We
researching.
also have good connections with the schools, with our brochure and all of that kind of, I mean, I think maybe even reaching a little farther to the kids, if
Maybe
possible.
like a project at the elementary school, maybe
Yeah.
the leadership type.
Yeah.
Or
the
some
elementary schools have leadership.
some ways to engage, but I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves. I find this very exciting.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to add is, when we did that, we promised things that didn't go into Sarasota, or that didn't go into Libby. Like, one of the top things from every kid was a zip line.
Yep.
And it was not a feasible thing to put into Libby for a variety of reasons. But there's one designed in to the master plan.
That's right.
Because that was, almost every classroom you went in, we need a zip line.
Yeah, they do like that.
I mean, it was
Yeah,
so
that's really
consistent.
popular.
There was a kid in every room who told us about the zip line that they wanted. I don't, things change and times have changed since then, and it's an exciting project. I hope that we embrace and engage as much as we can, because I think communities are excited about playgrounds.
Yeah, I think
I'm
so.
excited about
Well,
playgrounds.
do we want, we have two options. We can do an ad hoc, or we can do it as a commission. It doesn't have to just be two commissioners. We can do it as an entire commission. That is an option. I mean, I know that we have other ad hocs going on, and they're having, it would obviously be restrictive to our schedule, but we can have a special meeting if the rest of if other commissioners are wanting to. I don't know how Commissioner Firestone feels about it, or even Commissioner Ruff, but
Yeah, I mean,
it is an option. It doesn't have to just be two commissioners sitting on an ad hoc. And we are allowed to meet as a commission more than once a month, as long as we agendize it properly. So that's just,
I'm fine
I
with
don't know
that.
if you're wanting to do that or not.
yeah,
I can go
I
either
mean,
way.
I feel like this is as an important issue as anything we deal with.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's also something that has to, I mean, if we're budgeted to do something this year, like,
Accelerated.
wow, we
Yeah.
gotta speed this thing up.
Well, and the other question I have is, that's the tot playground first?
So,
Because they
so
playgrounds
there,
go
yeah,
in
there,
age
yeah,
spans.
there are two. There's the
Yeah.
Tots playground, the Child's playground, and their Tots is 2 to 5, and then 6 to 12. But also in the master plan, there's also a teen area.
teen one, yeah.
So that's going to come down the road, and the teen area would be closer to the sports courts.
So the tot is the first one that's budgeted for that price, and then the
that's from
second.
starting July 1st is when is the budget
So
to be
it-
installed by June 30th? Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we are 6 days in.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Thanks for that
Yeah.
notice.
Yeah. And the last thing I would like to go ahead and add, definitely community reach, I think, is very important, something that the commission indicated. One of the things that we can go ahead and do is, what better way to engage the community than an activity guide? We could do something
Yeah.
in the activity guide with it. It goes out to so many residents, so I think that would be a really good avenue
It's
to.
a great idea.
When
yeah.
is that?
The recreation activity guide?
No, when is the next one go out?
So the next one, so this one goes through August, so at September would be.
I think is similar to designing the survey for the pickleball. Like, if we're reaching out, it'd be nice to have a survey that we've put
Yeah.
together that we could
We can absolutely. go
collect
ahead and do
input. But that's something that I think we should, or a lot of us should be involved in,
Yeah.
kind of figuring out what to
think it's a
put in
great
that
idea.
survey.
No, I think it's fine to involve the whole commission. I agree with you, Ryan. This is easily one of the most important things that we're probably dealing with right now. The only addendum I'd have is that I think there are some very specific tasks that need to be done, and so I think there has to be some
In the
people
background. Mhm.
volunteering to do that, or, that we know, like pulling the plans for Libby Park, or
Empirical data.
pulling whatever data already exists, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's the only thing I'd just say, let's
What if
do
we
that.
use because you're going to want to get catalogs. We're going to get, playgrounds are different than other things. You can get, not
Right.
quite a bid, but here's what you might get for this price range. And they'll give that to you without an RFP and a hiring. They
Right.
will come and make a presentation and say, here's what our line is. And then So there, it's a little, yeah, some of that work would be good to
Well,
get done.
what about if we do an ad hoc and we have two commissioners sit on an ad hoc to kind of get in between our monthly meetings to gather some information to bring back to the commission, and then we're making decisions and recommendations as a commission with input from working
Everybody.
behind the scenes
Yeah.
of that ad hoc in the background? Because it's difficult for us to communicate as a commission.
That's the hard part.
Right.
Yeah.
In between meetings.
Right.
We have to be really careful of that. But if we do establish the ad hoc tonight, it allows for more
Well,
communication.
and you could take a meeting with a playground group.
Mhm.
They could come in,
Mhm.
and if we narrow it down to a couple, we could then have a meeting and have them
Right.
come to the meeting for everyone.
Now, for an ad hoc, to not establish a quorum of the commission, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the youth commissioner? So it's-
Non-voting.
No,
so
non-voting
it's
member.
Non-voting,
toward
so
our
it's 5,
quorum.
right?
Yep.
So it's
But
3, huh?
If she's interested in participating,
She could be the third.
she's welcome to join whatever the committee is, if you have time. I
But
know
we can
you're
only
very
have 2
busy.
commissioners sit on an ad hoc, right?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
that's
Yep.
it.
Okay,
That's the difference between being smaller and bigger is,
yeah. Well, I will support either. It really comes down to Commissioner Firestone's, if he's interested. We have to flip a coin on who is going to sit on an ad hoc.
if you want to, go ahead.
So-
No, I'm okay.
All right, then I will make a motion then that we develop an ad hoc committee to address design concepts for the new playground on an accelerated basis and bring the concept ideas to the full commission for consideration.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Could we have maybe a separate committee to work on a survey? Or
Yeah.
like, can we break this
It's a good
apart
idea.
so
Do
that?
two. Yeah, absolutely.
Is that, like, I'm happy to work on part of this, I just feel overwhelmed working
I
on.
don't know that we need to have
of it.
I don't know that we need to have
We could-
an
I
ad
just
hoc
work
for
on
that,
that.
if that's something, I mean, I think that staff is able to work with a commissioner
Right.
directly, one, especially if it's
Correct.
one
Yeah.
commissioner.
Okay.
So we can certainly formalize it for the record that we have so the motion would be that we have an ad hoc committee to address design concepts for the playground, which would be 2 commissioners, and that we have a volunteer commissioner to work with staff on developing a survey to bring back the survey questions to the full commission.
Yeah.
And the concepts. Okay.
Yeah. And I think it would be important to identify the ad hoc members.
Of course. Well, I have to have a second.
I second your motion.
And I have to have a roll call, and then we can appoint the commissioners.
Okay. So we have a motion and second. So with that, Chair Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ittner,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Firestone.
Yes.
Perhaps I might have done that out of order. And so we have 2 commissioners who have stepped up. So we have Commissioner Wilson and Commissioner Intner who would like to volunteer for that ad hoc. So can we note that for the record?
Absolutely.
And then we have Commissioner Firestone, who is willing to work directly with you or directed staff
Correct.
on developing a survey. And we'll look for updates at next month's meeting.
Have it a standing item.
Yep.
Yes, for
Yep.
quite a while
Yeah.
now. It
Agenda.
looks like.
Yeah, this one's one that I'm pretty excited about. I think it's fun.
It's funny.
Okay.
Big kid at heart.
Okay, let me get back to my agenda here. I think that we've got through the meat of it here. We have our informational update.
Department update
Department update.
for our facilities, where that playground takes place, our main facilities, for the month of June. Now, this was our first month of summer season programming, is near complete this week. So our recreation facilities have been really busy meeting the demand of the public. Our multipurpose room and our art room are busy daily with our fields. I know I say it all the time, but it feels really great. It's what we're about. It is exciting. Staff-wise, we welcome our newest recreation team member, Mariah Sanchez, and she joins us as a recreation specialist too. She brings a lot of experience from her past roles in the city of Malibu and in the city of Oxnard. So we invite commissioners and everyone to come by the department office and help give her a warm welcome if you have the
What's
chance.
her title?
Recreation Specialist 2.
Okay.
Yes. And we're also excited, as I usually am with this announcement, or update, is we were able to include summer half and full day camp options for the month of August this year. So these will be available for the first 2 weeks of August, to clarify, and similar to past offerings, to include that full day option, which we need. The camps have the longer hours than our specialty camps, which we've been highlighting to you, and they're going to be very fun for the kids. So we're excited for that. Our program highlight this month is adult softball, and the reason is we do have 8 teams now for our summer season. So we've been trying to get more, and this spirited group shows positive ownership of the ball fields. They really show up and enjoy the place. So this growing interest is exciting, and I wanted to include that because the growing interest brings in new community members, and we could possibly play 2 nights a week with an advanced and beginner group. The future goals right now is, even though we're in the midst of summer, we're going to be looking at fall. So for creative programming, we have newer additions of our creative programming include flag football for youth and our Ojai Japanese drumming for adults. So we wanted to put a push out there to any community members interested in offering any classes again. We always are accepting activity proposal forms. So we can put that through.
That's great.
And we are doing an amazing job, I believe.
I agree.
End of report.
Thank you.
And one of the things I did want to go ahead and build upon something that Weston mentioned, and I wanted to go ahead and formally thank him. This actually is going to be his last meeting with us. He actually has moved on to the city manager's office, and so next month we will be joined by Ms. Sanchez. Again, just wanted to go ahead and formally say thank you for all your services in the rec department.
Thanks, Luis.
Well, we'll miss you. But
Recreation brought me here.
congratulations, yes.
Thank you, Weston.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, and I didn't see a council liaison online, but maybe I just am not seeing, no?
Not this time
Okay.
around.
Great. And any other commission reports or comments? Okay. I think we've talked about our future agenda items. I know Pickleball and ad hoc commission committee will continue to give an update, especially with those RFPs coming in. I think it would be helpful to just bring a copy of it. Just sounds like there's some interest in having that transparency. So maybe next month we could include that as well.
And distribute it maybe to the whole commission right now.
So you're saying put the RFP in like the packet for,
I think that would be good,
Yeah,
just so that they know.
I think that was just an oversight, because I had that thought, but I don't think I ever asked Louise about how to do
Well,
that.
And if you'll just send it out even before our next meeting.
Yeah.
Just on that packet,
right
it
after this
can-
meeting, I'll go ahead and send it out to the
That's
entire
perfect.
commission. That way,
Thank you.
we have a copy
I
of it.
think that it's
And-
important to have that transparency.
Yeah, as I was going to ask if you could share it with the people we've gotten emails from.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to go ahead and do it.
And then, of course, we have the playground that we discussed, and
Internship.
internship
Internship.
program we'll bring back, if you have opportunity between now and then to get an update on those questions.
Yeah.
And, of course, we can add items as the month continues, but that seems to be that's probably going to be a pretty full
comprehensive list.
Yep.
meeting. Yes, that is going to be full. Okay.
Informationally report back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Louise, can you add that, the pool,
Mhm.
basically the same ones, and then we'll add the, well, we don't need to have the yeah, we kind of
Yeah.
do. We need the same ones. Okay,
Yeah.
we can
Yeah, we'll
discuss
have
it
the same-
further.
Yeah, we'll have the
throughout
same
month.
ones, and then we'll go ahead and
And
add the
we're putting the
playground.
master plan on, the Sarasota master plan?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
to bring it back, Sarasota master plan, refresh.
Yeah.
I think it would be important. I sense that plan has been in works for a long time, and I'd like to refresh that.
Yep.
Okay, well, I will officially adjourn then at
Okay.
almost 2 hours, 7:57.
All right.